Today we are facing some of the greatest challenges of our lives, from our health to political unrest, the environment, financial uncertainty, and the nation's racial divide. Welcome to Bill Myers Inspires. My idea for this show was to invite guests and get the conversation started, to take a deep dive into the issues that impact our world with an eye to exploring solutions. And we encourage our listeners to look within themselves to take decisive action to make a positive difference. Welcome to Bill Myers Inspires. I am your host, Bill Myers, and today we are exploring racism and the Asian American community. As you know, we have been doing a deep dive into the topic of racism in America at this time, which of course was inspired and brought about most recently by the killing of George Floyd. And that set forth a whole awareness and series of protests and events that occurred not only in America and across America, but also around the world as well. So I am interested in exploring more aspects than just the black-white dynamic with regards to racism in America, because there are many more people who are American citizens. And so I am excited to dive into this portion to examine and have a conversation about the Asian American community. And not only do we have the Asian American community in this race dialogue as it relates to the Black Lives Matter and the killing of George Floyd, but there is another piece to this which also has contributed pretty significantly, and that is the coronavirus, which we have our occupant of the White House has referred to as the China flu and the China virus and all that sort of thing. And those types of terms are pretty divisive and can create a lot of additional heartache and turmoil with regards to race relations in America. So Asian American citizens face unique challenges today as COVID-19 ravages the world, which originated in China. Black Lives Matter, and a divisive political climate. How has the Asian American community been affected by racism in America? My guest today is Christine Toy Johnson. She is an award-winning actor, writer, director, filmmaker, and advocate for inclusion based in New York City. As a performer, she has been breaking the color barrier for over 30 years and has been featured extensively on Broadway, off-Broadway, in regional theaters across the country, in film, television, and concerts worldwide. An avid advocate for inclusion, Christine is a member of the elected leadership of the Dramatists Guild of America and serves as chair of the Guild's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, as well as a host of other podcast Talkback distributed on the Broadway Podcast Network. She is a founding member of the Obie-Award winning AAPAC, Asian American Performers Action Coalition, founder of the Asian American Musical Theater Writers Project, served for 28 years as part of the elected leadership of Actors Equity Association, and as chair of the union's Equal Opportunity Committee for 22 years, and served on the board of the Tony-honored Alliance for Inclusion in the Arts for over 15 years. Christine was honored by the JACL, the nation's largest and oldest Asian American civil rights organization, in 2010, for exemplary leadership and dedication. The Why Look Award for Service in the Arts from the Asian American Arts Alliance in 2012, and the Rosetta Lenoir Award for Outstanding Contributions to the Universality of the Human Spirit from Actors Equity Association in 2013. She is a graduate of Sarah Lawrence College and the Certificate of Screenwriting program at NYU. Please help me welcome my guest today, Christine Toy Johnson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's so great to talk to you or hear you through my computer.
Yeah, how about that? How about that? So before we get started, I want to make sure that the audience understands. Christine and I worked together in New York at the Public Theater in an original musical entitled Genesis. And I played the character of Abel, and she was the archangel.
That's right.
And she still is that archangel forever
Aw.
and ever in my heart.
Aw.
Near and dear. Wonderfully talented actress, writer, director, producer, industry stuff, and has done tremendous work there. And I get to see her on TV all the time. Law and Order, you name it. She's been all around the spectrum, and it's always a delight to see you and your smiling face.
Thank you so much. Thank you for thinking of me today.
Oh, you've been doing such tremendous work in the industry, advocating for inclusion and that sort of thing. And that has been something that I've been able to keep up to speed with you on LinkedIn and Facebook. And so I think that that work is awesome and is much needed. And so I want to get into our conversation now with regards to the Asian American community. And I would like to start with sort of a sequence here because you reside in New York City.
Right.
So I want to start with just the dynamics of how COVID-19 and how that just took hold of New York and what that experience was like living in New York when that jumped off, because you were the spotlight of America at that point.
Right. Well, actually, I have been prior to March 13th of this year, traveling as part of the cast of the first national North American tour of Come From Away. And so I had been in Dallas up until we were told everything's been shut down and take things from your trunk that you might need for the next, I don't know, 6 weeks or so. And they sent us home. And so I arrived that weekend. And it was like everybody else, wrapped in the uncertainty of what was going on and losing my job, however temporarily or long term, I didn't know at the time.
Sure.
And I am a native New Yorker. I've lived here mostly, except for when I'm traveling for work, my entire adult life. I grew up in the suburbs of New York City, so I of course had great concern for the numbers I was seeing, but then very heartened by the leadership of our Governor Cuomo, who really swiftly put measures in place to have us shelter in place. My husband and I and our little dog, we basically didn't even leave to go grocery shopping for the first 3 or 4 months of the pandemic. We only would walk our dog, of course, outside, but I live in a very residential, quiet neighborhood, and so I wasn't really experiencing I don't know, I guess what you might have seen on the news as the panic or the surrounding feeling like we were in the epicenter. Some people would contact me and say, "Oh my goodness, how are you doing? New York City is so bad." And I didn't really experience that because I was in my quiet neighborhood in Washington Heights, just walking my dog and staying inside. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, because of course a lot of the TV coverage, sort of, settled on Times Square, and it just looked like is anybody living in New York at this point? I mean, it was
Oh, right.
rare. You know what I mean?
Well,
So
yeah, for a lot of time, and as I said, I live in a residential neighborhood, but we still have, people. I live in an area that is populated with, a good amount of people. But because we were all paying attention to the mandate to stay inside, you didn't really see people except for when you walked your dog. And so I didn't experience, I think some of the photographs or the footage of New York City being empty, except for like everybody else.
right.
It just seemed very, very quiet and respectful, really, of each other, because we were dealing with this together. And I'm very proud of New York City and New York State for how we were able to turn those numbers around and flatten the curve and get through the worst part. Hopefully, who knows what's going to happen with a new wave, but that we were able to turn those numbers around and get our rate of infection way down.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys did a fantastic job. It was, and as a former resident of New York City, I could totally, well, I couldn't really empathize as much. You know what I mean? It was such an extraordinary um, episode. Again, and we're not done with it, of course,
Right, right.
but it was very dramatic because it had not swept across the country yet.
Right.
So everyone was watching this unfold there primarily.
Well, and also I have to say that because Broadway was shut down, and and then of course all of the restaurants and all of the adjacent businesses in Times Square, I understand why you would see pictures of Times Square empty, as Broadway is such a huge contributor to the economy of our city. Um, that I understand why they would want to show pictures of the normally very, very bustling, sort of robustly occupied area of our city.
Yeah, exactly. Why else would anybody go to New York if they weren't going to catch a Broadway show? I mean, it's like, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it was very. Uh, I honor the work that the governor did. Also, he was very brave in standing up for what he needed to do, and
Mhm,
in the
mhm,
face of crazy criticism and wild accusations coming from
mhm.
a resident in the White House.
Right.
So that is fantastic, and I know that it is devastating with regards to the employment issues because I too was impacted by the shutdown of employment,
Mhm.
and and hope that will occur or come back. It's
Yes, no, it will. I believe it will. This too shall pass,
yeah.
and we just have to be together on it. And I firmly believe that the arts have been around since the dawn of time. We're
Oh,
not going anywhere.
oh yeah, no, you're correct. You're correct.
Right.
But that's tremendous. So we are now. I want to take a look at then the incident with George Floyd
Hmm.
and deal with the impact of that on top of because again this whole thing is sort of a layered cake. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
There was the
Exactly.
first thing and then there was this other thing, which again it who could have known? You know what I mean? That would be the
Right.
sequence of things. So, but I want to talk about that in just a moment because we are about to take our first break.
Okay.
So, uh, you are again. It's a joy to have you here. A joy to have you here, Christine Toy Johnson, an artist and an advocate for Asian American inclusion, particularly in the entertainment industry, a New Yorker, native New Yorker, and she is sharing her experiences from the perspective of the Asian American community, and we are proud to have her with us today. You are listening to Bill Myers Inspires, and we will be right back in just one moment.
Today, we are facing some of the greatest challenges of our lives, from our health to political unrest, the environment, financial uncertainty, and the nation's racial divide. Tune in every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Bill Myers Inspires, as he and his guests take a deep dive into the issues that impact our world with an eye to exploring solutions. Emmy Award-winning actor Bill Myers is an accomplished actor, jazz musician, filmmaker, writer, educator, and speaker. As a biracial man who's both black and white, Bill leverages his background, talent, and voice through creativity, compassion, and connection as activism for social justice to focus on uniting the divide and compelling change. Bill Myers Inspires encourages listeners to look within themselves and take decisive action to make a positive difference. For more information, visit his website, billmyersinspires.com, and sign in for the latest news and updates.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
You're listening to Bill Myers Inspires here on the Inspired Choices Network. We're here every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for joining us. And now, let's get back to the conversation. You're listening to Bill Myers Inspires, and we are here with my guest, Christine Toy Johnson, as we discuss racism and the Asian American community. Before the break, we were about to launch into the episode of the George Floyd event and its impact on America and again, sort of worldwide. But so, Christine, take me through your experience of that, and how did that affect you and the community that surrounds you?
Well, that's a very big question. As someone who has been really mindful of the systemic racism that has been existing in not only in our entertainment industry, but in America, I, of course, have tremendous outrage and pain over seeing the events. And I preceded that with my experience as an advocate for inclusion, only because I think that I just want to point out that it became clear that there were some people who hadn't been engaged in ongoing conversations about this prior to this tremendously tragic wake-up call. Yeah. And so what I think happened is that it cracked open these larger conversations of the really ugly truths that have been actually going on. It's not a new problem at all. Literally hundreds and hundreds of years have had these kinds of systemic racial problems embedded in them.
Yeah, since the beginning.
Yeah,
I mean,
since
the
the beginning
of this thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as an Asian American person, an understanding the history of xenophobia in this country, it, I believe, gives me an added layer of empathy and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a real call to arms of our allyship with each other, for all of us who can look at this situation and the truths and really dig deep within ourselves to, like, as I'm listening to the description of your show, find ways that we can individually and collectively work towards a better place for all of us. I have been very intent on working towards equal rights and how that is manifested in the arts because of the power of storytelling to shift perceptions of who we are and what we can do. And I think that all of these events were where people came together finally and said, that's enough. We cannot sit back and say, oh dear, another horrible thing happened. We need to lean forward into it.
Yes, indeed. I couldn't agree with you more. It certainly created the opportunity, I think, to engage the conversations more broadly.
Right.
But I think that what's interesting about this, that we've that I have to remind myself, is that for those of us who are a part of the persons of color and that community, and the awareness and the walk that we have, in order to create the shift, I believe, and to create the dialogue, first we have to have the dialogue, and first we have to have a moment of awareness. It's not your awareness, it's not my awareness, but it's the awareness of others in order to even effectively have the conversation and work towards, because there are some folks, maybe prior to the George Floyd incident and also afterwards, who just don't think that there's really a problem. I mean, and so awareness is number one, because if you can't name it, you can't fix it. So that is really where I've been trying to focus in, is to try to figure out how we can present the case so that we're able to people to recognize or realize for the first time, or awaken to, become awoke,
right?
Whatever the phrase is,
right.
But first is that, and I believe that then from there, we can march toward a much brighter future together, and we can get towards stuff like humanity, the only,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Race. But first we got to peel through this onion to get to that. Otherwise we oversimplify. And this is the same thing that happens, Christine, when you have someone challenged and they say, well, just say it, Black Lives Matter. And they can't, because they just jump cut without reason to, well, all lives matter.
Right.
And so that just sort of stamps on the awareness and what is being asked at that moment, which is, I need you to see me. I need you to recognize me as a person of color. I need you to acknowledge that. And that answer, again, yes, on one hand, we're moving toward humanity, but it's a serious jump cut, and you are ignoring, you know what I mean? Choosing to ignore this thing that says, I need you to acknowledge me. So I think that, again, that in the oversimplification, we actually, it dumbs it down. It just is, it it's a cancellation. Your feeling is really not valid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really, really important, because I think that there are a lot of people who just wish to wave that magic wand and get there. And I'm like, well, I don't think, we can just break into 4-part harmony on Kumbaya just yet. You know what I mean? There's some unfinished business. There's some real matters that need to be addressed in order to create an equitable situation and to honor the fact that America is comprised of all of these amazing people from every part of the globe.
Right.
Who share some sort of vision. But there's some parts of this I don't think that we share, and that seems to be the problem, or our vision of sharing is, and it continues to move us towards us and them, as opposed to more broadly looking at Americans and understanding that is a rainbow.
Yes.
I mean, it is
absolutely
not a white male normal. You know what I mean? It's that whole sort of thing.
Well, we're a nation built on immigrants, literally. So to ignore that, it just is not the truth of our history.
Absolutely.
And I also think, really drilling down, it becomes about empathy, and it comes down to being curious about one another and really wanting to know about one another, even if you don't understand that person or you don't understand where they've been or where they're going, to really be open to knowing more and not letting fear-based prejudice, literally prejudging, be a part of your everyday life. And so I think that there have been so many, it's become a sort of default position, and I'm thinking it's subconscious even. It's not I think what they call it implicit bias, so it's not an intentional bias on people's parts, but assumptions that we can just know about somebody because of the color of their skin or their cultural heritage, or you name it, that a person can be understood in a monolithic kind of way, which simply isn't true. So I think that because we have had as a society a tendency to label very quickly, we have done ourselves a disservice in getting to know the individuals.
Yes.
And then not assuming one thing about each person, and then becoming defensive about being reminded that we are not one person.
Right. You are correct. That is, and I understand what you are saying for sure. And so I think the next thing I want to take a look at is the rhetoric of the China virus and all of that, which is, I know, a narrative that's been thrown out into the public, and we are, in this nation, it doesn't take a whole lot of suggesting for somebody to pick that up,
right,
and to level that against citizens, and without recognizing, again, without taking a moment to recognize that you are speaking to another American citizen and or another human being at the end of the, you know what I mean? And so, you're the enemy. You are it. And I was doing some reading of some different incidents that I came across that have happened, and experiences from various, not just Chinese American, but in the larger Asian community, different sort of, ways in which they were treated poorly. And that's important to know also, because I don't think that I don't leave anything to chance at this point. I don't think we can afford to make the assumption either. You know what I mean? That someone understands that right. difficulty, or has ever been accosted as this person who created a pandemic. You know what I'm saying? It's some responsibility for this thing. It's like, it's crazy. And so I know that it's a horrible thing. And I would like to just explore a little bit of that here in just a minute. But we're inching up towards another break.
Okay.
And I love this conversation with you, Christine.
Yes.
It's good to talk with you about this.
You too.
And so we will continue in just a moment. You are listening to Bill Myers Inspires, and we are talking about racism and the Asian American community. And we will continue that conversation in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Today, we are facing some of the greatest challenges of our lives, from our health to political unrest, the environment, financial uncertainty, and the nation's racial divide. Tune in every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Bill Myers Inspires, as he and his guests take a deep dive into the issues that impact our world with an eye to exploring solutions. Emmy Award-winning actor Bill Myers is an accomplished actor, jazz musician, filmmaker, writer, educator, and speaker. As a biracial man who's both black and white, Bill leverages his background, talent, and voice through creativity, compassion, and connection as activism for social justice to focus on uniting the divide and compelling change. Bill Myers Inspires encourages listeners to look within themselves and take decisive action to make a positive difference. For more information, visit his website, BillMyersInspires.com, and sign in for the latest news and updates.
You're listening to Bill Myers Inspires here on the Inspired Choices Network. We're here every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for joining us. And now, let's get back to the conversation. We're back with my special guest today, Christine Toy Johnson, and we're discussing racism and the Asian American community. So, Christine, right before the break, decided we're going to head into talking about the impact of the China virus, those types of dog whistles, more than dog whistles. I mean, that type of rhetoric and what that has done and how that impacts and the Asian American community. So I just want to step back now and let you share your thoughts about that or experiences that you come in contact with.
You know, honestly, the presence of anti-Asian sentiment and or rhetoric is not new, and wasn't just invented in March of this year. And for what's interesting about the Asian American community is that I think we are bonded by our experience of how we're perceived in this country. So though many of all my friends, you know, we're Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, Filipino, Cambodian, and yet we still share this umbrella sort of label of Asian American, and it is because of what we share in how we're perceived here. I have never spoken to a person of any generation, Asian American person, who has not been complimented on how well they speak English, no matter what generation they are, or someone who hasn't been asked, where are you from? Where are you really from? Meaning, not I'm from New York State, but wanting to know cultural background, or the other question that's very common is, what's your nationality? And I will always say I'm American because I am. I'm sixth generation American on my mother's side, actually, second generation on my father's. But that is such a common occurrence for us as we are continually perceived as a perpetual foreigner, or continually otherized. And so it's not a new thing. It's just been magnified and amplified horribly because of the terms that the president has used to put blame on the country of China and to not call it COVID-19 or the coronavirus as it is scientifically known, but
Right.
as these other things that I won't even repeat.
Mhm.
And so as a result, it has become for some people attached to the reason, so the country of China, and then therefore anyone who looks like they are from China, even if they're not actually Chinese, but they look like they're from that part of the world, they have become the recipients of a lot of everything from verbal assaults to physical assaults. And it has just gotten worse. I read something just this morning about how when the president was hospitalized with COVID-19, and right after the presidential debate where he blamed China for the whole pandemic and so forth, the amount of anti-Asian rhetoric on social media increased by 85%.
Wow.
So, words matter, of course, and if some people want to put blame on the virus in order to, I don't know, I'm going to have a little bit of compassion here, in order to try to understand it better, in order to find a reason behind why the economy has shut down, why businesses have been suffering, why people have been dying. I think that is a way that some people have found a way to cope with the uncertainty.
Mhm.
And I think that's really true with all labels. I think that, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of times I think people feel like they need to understand who someone is in order to feel comfortable, when in fact they have not even scratched the surface or have not even really asked a question about who the person is or what they believe or what they what they eat for breakfast or any kind of detail.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have been inside mostly, though I do live in a city it is arguably one of the most diverse cities in the country, but I
Sure.
have heard friends experience verbal abuse when they're just walking down the street, minding their own business, or on the subway. This was earlier in the summer. But what it does do is, even if you are not personally experiencing an act, a hate crime of any magnitude, you do start to internalize these things, and you start to be very aware that there is a large group of people who do blame you for everything that's gone wrong in their lives and because of the pandemic. And you also can talk about the blaming, the tendency to blame others for things when you might not understand everything, or just because it might be a more comfortable stance.
Yeah.
But so it is added to the open wound that exists.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it sure does, and I think that it's collective. It's collective. The experience doesn't have to be mine
Right. Of
for
course.
me to share
That's right.
the wound, because if it's not me today, it's me tomorrow.
That's right. And as I said, it goes really deep. You internalize it, and then you think. I remember in the very beginning when I first went to a grocery store, is someone looking at me, and are they going to say something horrible to me, or or my parents, when they go out,
Mhm.
and my friends. So it's not that I don't, that it's not impactful to me. It's just impactful in a different way than might be expected.
Right. Yes, indeed. Well, it's interesting because I had pulled an article this morning in prep for this here uh, conversation, and it was from National Geographic in September 2nd, 2020. And the headline on the article says, America's long history of scapegoating its
Mm.
citizens.
Mm-hmm.
So as you said a moment ago, this is not new, but
Mm-mm.
no more new than, the black man's plight.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
This is not new. This is long. It's just what's the latest, flavor of the month sort of thing. How do we chop it up now? What's the new, what I mean, term
Right.
that's been labeled onto it? I'm not a big fan of labels either because it just seems to um, box us into a single narrative, and it's not true. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Something about me, and so in order to squeeze me into that box, I'm not really interested in getting into the box for
Right.
comfort
Absolutely.
or convenience.
Right. Absolutely.
So, um, so I think that's that's fair enough. So now I would like to get into a little bit. So it's important that people know that words matter. It's important that the listening audience knows also that these words matter, and that we really must invest a lot more energy in trying to better understand not only others, but better understand ourselves as we can move towards a more compassionate and empathetic uh, way of living, and
Absolutely.
understand that we are all connected.
Right. I also want to just say a little bit about intent versus impact, because I think there are many, many very well-meaning people who say things or do things, and if they end up finding out that they've hurt someone's feelings, they will come back with, well, I didn't mean anything by it. And of course that person didn't mean anything by it, but the impact is something that is real. And I think the more empathy we can have for that, for each other as well, is a fundamental part of all of this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I am. Again, as I had told you, in our conversation prior, that it's so important in the midst of our focus being, Black Lives Matter, and that whole black white thing. There is so many folks that get lost and can be lost in that narrative, and there are many, many, many shades of gray. There are many, many, many people of color, you know what I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
make up that spectrum, and their experiences and their voice and their contribution to this country being what it is significant.
Yes.
You cannot extract that. You know what I mean? You can't negate the contribution. Now, whether people were ever received the proper credit for the actual work that they did, well, that's
Right.
another story.
That's a whole nother story, right? Yes.
Yeah, but nonetheless, the contribution was real and was valid, and helps make America exactly what it is,
Mm-hmm.
and what its dream or its vision. There are people that are still maintaining and holding that vision of a better America a more perfect union. And so I think it's just really important that we're able to acknowledge and honor all of the various peoples that make up the American citizenry, and
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's so important. So we are going to take one more break at this time. You are listening to Bill Myers Inspires, and I'm here with my special guest today, Christine Toy Johnson, as we discuss racism and the Asian American community. We'll be right back in just one moment.
Today, we are facing some of the greatest challenges of our lives, from our health to political unrest, the environment, financial uncertainty, and the nation's racial divide. Tune in every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Bill Myers Inspires, as he and his guests take a deep dive into the issues that impact our world with an eye to exploring solutions. Emmy Award-winning actor Bill Myers is an accomplished actor, jazz musician, filmmaker, writer, educator, and speaker. As a biracial man who's both black and white, Bill leverages his background, talent, and voice through creativity, compassion, and connection as activism for social justice to focus on uniting the divide and compelling change. Bill Myers Inspires encourages listeners to look within themselves and take decisive action to make a positive difference. For more information, visit his website, BillMyersInspires.com, and sign in for the latest news and updates.
You're listening to Bill Myers Inspires here on the Inspired Choices Network. We're here every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for joining us. And now, let's get back to the conversation. We're back. You're listening to Bill Myers Inspires, and I'm here with my guest, Christine Toy Johnson, and we're discussing racism and the Asian American community. So, Christine, you have done, you've spent a lot of your time focused on inclusion within the entertainment industry, and trying to really move the needle in that way. So now we come to the George Floyd and all that sort of stuff. And I saw that the industry itself, some of the industry started to make moves to correct some things almost immediately, which was impressive. You know what I mean? Some of the producers that had I know that I was looking at, what was it? One of the animation shows, but it was like, perhaps a white actor who had been voicing a black character or an Asian character. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, wait a minute. Why don't we have, black actor or something, doing that? Because these are parts of the problems, you know what I mean? Is that we find ourselves still getting sort of squeezed out and become that one-dimensional sort of caricature, as opposed to really engaging these things a little bit more honestly and bringing a little bit, getting real with that, because we are perpetuating part of the problem, right? I mean, by continuing to play off of the stereotypes, the crude nature of that. So I would imagine that your advocacy at this time has probably met some very interesting new conversations and mobility, as far as inclusion, not only just on the front line as actors and that sort of thing, but also on the back end, directors, writers, and that sort of thing. So can you tell me what sort of excitement has come about and interesting and meaningful conversations have come about as a result of this? Because I think that, again, the George Floyd thing, I think it woke everybody up from every sector, you know what I mean, and called them into question about what can I do, and am I a part of the solution or a part of the problem? And so I've seen from afar many people making gestures and making certain moves to move in a more perfect way. And so can you share a little bit about your conversations, and have you noticed that those have accelerated and taken on more meaning at this time?
Sure. Well, these conversations have been going on for a long time. I think that just with the George Floyd murder, the conversations, as I said earlier, have been cracked open in a new way. I'm part of the Asian American Performers Action Coalition, a co-founding steering committee member. We've been actually together since 2011. And we have been collecting hiring stats. We started out with hiring stats on Broadway and the 18 largest nonprofit theaters in New York City, in order to see what the situation with representation was. And we have since expanded those stats to include. So it's not just Asian American actors, it's Asian American, African American, Latinx, MENA, and Indigenous actors, writers, and directors, as I said, working on Broadway and in the 18 largest nonprofit New York City theaters. And it has shown us that there is no parity. The parity is clearly missing across the industry. But I also wanted to mention that the Dramatists Guild and the American Theater Wing and many other organizations have been working together to collate various stats being collected across the industry. They're going to be released together pretty soon. So you'll be getting stats on writers across the country and playwrights rather, and directors and choreographers and women, and a lot of different sets of numbers that I think will paint the picture very clearly and help us continue these larger, really more deeper, more raw conversations that we've had since the end of May.
That's tremendous. That's great, and I am so glad to have that. They have you in there swinging that bat.
Well, I'm a part of a very, very amazing team.
Yeah. Well, you are an amazing component of that team. I can vouch for that.
Thank you.
So I think that is fantastic work, and I hope that data that is being collected and those, that they're able to action on that and again move us all forward, and get us together. I think that's noble, very noble.
Thank you. Well, I also want to add that I feel that our conversation, so bolstered or supported by these stats, they've definitely become bolder. We are not playing around. I by nature am a diplomatic advocate, so I'm all about building bridges, not setting fire to problems. That's just my style. And so but I have noticed that even the most diplomatic conversations have become stronger and not afraid, not that we were afraid before, but even more so unapologetic about speaking our truths and saying, look, this is how it is. These are my experiences. These are the numbers that back up the hiring biases. These are these are the numbers that show the economic impact of producing your playwrights of color in the smaller spaces, where then they make less money and their actors make less money because the minimums are smaller in these smaller spaces.
That's great stuff, Christine. I am so sorry to cut you off, but we got to get out of here.
Oh, sure.
Enjoy talking to you, and we'll catch you next week. Thank you so much. Thank you for spending your afternoon right here with us at Bill Myers Inspires. Remember, we're here every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Inspired Choices Network. Remember to take time this week to take a breath and look within yourself and figure out how you can make a positive difference in this world. Spread the word, and we'll see you here next Friday. Have a wonderful week.